Greetings, my name is Matt Dietz, and this is my experience with the stackable water filter. I will finish up this screencast with a little information on where this particular activity falls on the inquiry continuum. First of all, I'd like to talk about the collection. Could make our own muddy water, or we could go ahead and grab it out of a mud puddle or a pond. I selected an area on our property that is always full of mud puddles. It's a farm lane, and I headed on down there, took a little selfie of myself on the farm lane, and then collected the water. This process was repeated a few times, and you'll see why as I progress through the slideshow. Now, process would tell you that I should go ahead and explain my design to you first before discussing the building of my stackable filter. But again, I'm going to hold off on that until just a little bit later. I'm going to talk about the building and receive the materials from Dr. Dietrich in the mail and laid them out on the table, as well as acquired the extra materials that I had throughout the house or a quick trip to Dollar General, and started to assemble the cups by putting a coffee filter in the bottom to kind of contain the materials within the cup, as well as putting some holes in the bottom of the cup and some pins in the side to support them on top of one another. I selected a Cool Whip container and cut a hole in that more or less sealed off any overflow that may creep down the sides, and made a real tight fit. Worked fairly well, actually very well, and was a very sturdy way of holding my stack vertical. Went ahead and started assembling the pieces, and capstone was a piece of cheesecloth to take out the largest particles. Now, when it came to the design, I had to fight every urge to go ahead and Google what might be the best way to organize my materials. And I'm not sure if that was permitted or not, but I chose to just go ahead and try and think it through on my own. And that is where some of the mistakes came into play, but it gave me an opportunity to try and think through things on my own. The first design that I came up with was I put the gravel on top to remove large particles, and thought logically, let's get the small ones out. So I went ahead and put sand and charcoal then to remove chemicals. Now, I felt pretty certain about those three. The aluminum, I was not sure what it was, but I was guessing it was another chemical filter, and thought we'd finish the water all through that, and I thought maybe it would even take care of some of the small charcoal particles, because of using a Brita filter before in our house water. I know that once in a while we get some pieces coming through, although they're a bit larger than the charcoal that we were using for this exercise. Didn't work out too well. It just really did not filter the way it should, and I ended up with what I would consider still fairly filthy water, but yet it did remove some of the particles. So, the design sequel. I thought, well, if it's not filtering completely, I was not sure what the alum was, so I thought, well, I'll go ahead and research that specifically. And I found out that it could be used to take particles and help them to, in a way, coagulate into a group, which made them easier to filter. So I went ahead and I put that on top, the gravel, the sand, and then the charcoal. Feeling pretty confident, after another trip to the mud puddle, went ahead and gave it a little bit of a try, even with what I would consider even more dirty water. And the water was cleaner with the exception of having a fair amount of charcoal laying in the bottom of my bowl. Well, now at this point my filter system is looking a little rough, and I didn't have enough materials to go ahead. I was a little overkill the first time and used too many materials, so I had to work with what I currently had. After consideration, I thought, well, the sand is designed to remove small particles. Would it remove the charcoal? I wasn't too sure because the charcoal seemed to be very, very fine. So after this unsuccessful attempt, I went ahead and with the design reloaded. And here I went with alum on top, the gravel, the charcoal, and then the sand, hopefully to filter out the charcoal. That was a successful endeavor, and I ended up with water that I felt was fairly clean. I had a little bit of charcoal at the very bottom. I don't know that you can see it at the picture. That settled out over time, so I ended up with just ever so slight amount, and looked fairly drinkable. So I went through from some real muddy water through my stackable filter, as you can see the residue that was left here, into a relatively clean type of bottled drinking water. Now, as clean as that may look, I still don't think I would want to drink it. I think it is missing some type of chemical process or some type of disinfecting process that would remove harmful microbes, some type of biological microbe that could be dangerous to my system. So I don't think I'd drink it, but I'd have no problem giving it to my plants. I enjoyed doing the activity. Found that it was a little more difficult or surprising to me than what I had initially expected. And quite honestly, wish that I would have taken the time maybe to work through it with my kids as well. Just that I think it's a neat learning experience, and challenged me on a number of levels. With that in mind, let's go ahead and take a look at where this activity may have fallen on the inquiry continuum. The first essential feature is learners are engaged in scientifically oriented questions. I found this to be more teacher-guided. For instance, the question, can you filter your water? Or what order are your materials? I felt that was more the learner engages in questions provided by the teacher or the materials that were offered. So that would be more of a teacher-guided situation. Now on the inquiry continuum, this is where this activity starts to change. For instance, the next essential feature states, learners give priority to evidence, which allows them to develop and evaluate explanations that address scientifically oriented questions. The learner was, in this case, asked to collect data 3 times, once for their school area, once for their design, and finally the building of their stackable filter. So in this instance, I believe there was certain data that the learner was directed to collect. The next essential feature, learners formulate explanations from evidence to address scientifically oriented questions. I believe the learner was guided in the process of formulating explanations from evidence. the learner was asked to compare their filter to the Earth's filter, or even in the design steps, trying to explain why they felt certain earth materials should be in a specific order. Next, learners evaluate their explanations in light of alternative explanations, particularly those reflecting scientific understanding. Here, the learner was directed towards areas and sources of scientific knowledge, asked to reflect on how they could have improved their design, or asked again how it relates to the Earth's filter that cleans our drinking water that we use every day. The last essential feature states learners communicate and justify their proposed explanations. I believe this fell far on the spectrum of learner directed, because the learner communicated and justified their explanations. And really at the end, the question was, is your water clean enough to drink, or is your water clean enough to give to your potted plant? And allow the learner to use their thought process in explaining why either of those may be true or untrue to them.